4 years ago, when I was on vacation in Warsaw, Poland, I had some bat soup, some raw fish that wasn't supposed to be eaten raw, and I got severe food poisoning, and I ended up in the hospital in Warsaw. And what really annoyed me was something that most people don't think about when they think about healthcare. I got to the hospital, and when I looked at the food that they were giving me, I realized that if I didn't start out sick when I went to the hospital, I could end up very sick. And fortunately, I had read about, I have long since known about the benefits of fasting, but I was kind of forced to practice at that time because I didn't want to get even more sick than I had already been. And fortunately, people there are very open to new ideas, right? If you go to a hospital here in the United States and you explain that you want to avoid sugar and MSG, you might get sent to the mental health department of that hospital, right? But in Warsaw and in other countries, especially in Europe, much more open-minded. And even though I couldn't speak the language and I had to use Google Translate to talk to the doctor, I had a relatively pleasant experience. I ended up having to fast a day and a half before they understood what was going on, but I had a good experience with the doctor who was there, and it gave me a nice warm fuzzy feeling. But earlier this year, at the beginning of COVID-19, my big fear was that I would be asymptomatic, right? But I would test positive and I would be forcefully locked up, right? And then I would end up in a clinic or in a hospital or even just locked in my own home and try to order healthy foods, and people would have difficulty understanding me, depending on, I had conjured up all sorts of images of how quarantine would look like, and having to negotiate with people about my health situation. I have some chronic issues. I wouldn't call them diseases, but I keep them at bay with healthy eating. And I got very scared of that. And I conjured up how I would negotiate with some of these people. And I did some reading online about how to handle that, but the news was not good. A lot of people online claim that you want to get out of the big cities because they're much more closed-minded to that stuff. You got a lot of people in the big cities who are on EBT food stamps, and they're going to be a mess if they can't get to their food. You can forget about your healthy foods. And I started preparing and then hoarding up on dried canned foods and stuff like that. When everybody was buying toilet paper, I was actually buying canned food. That's how funny it was. I didn't run into any problems. See, I would much rather not have toilet paper. I'm not going to poison my immune system by not having toilet paper, but certainly, or unless I lived with people who ate unhealthy foods and they didn't have toilet paper, and now I might come into contact with the excrement of the results of junk food. But I live with healthy people, so that wasn't a big problem for me. I was more worried about whether or not I would have my food supplies. Unfortunately, when I see on the news about how packed the hospitals are, sometimes I catch a glimpse of the hospital food when they're shooting the scenes on the television screen. They don't look very good, and that was my big worry. I'm a little bit less concerned about the bat soup, actually. I think we should have a strong immune system to deal with stuff like that. I'm more worried about the sugar and the MSG. See, I wish we could do a simulation. If somebody had eaten bat soup 200 years ago before sugar and MSG were invented, how bad the situation would have been. I would imagine I would much rather have the bat soup 200 years ago than to have sugar today. But unfortunately, nobody has done a simulation or a study on that.